Welcome back. Brian Calfano along with Amy Blancett and Nick Reed, our Ozarks First contributors. They have other jobs, though. Nick is over at 104.1 KSGF, and Amy is the head of the Drew Lewis Foundation, Fairbanks, Missouri State, running for governor next cycle.
Never know.
And
Never know.
ambassador to Zimbabwe, from what rumors tell us. Anyway, look, Bill Barr, Attorney General, has been asked in a petition. I guess you never really asked in a petition, but you were making demands as the petitioners to resign because these folks, former Justice Department officials, all going back to the Eisenhower and Kennedy years, way back, have said that he's been compromised and he hasn't been able to do his job impartially. And they blame a lot of this on President Trump, but they say Barr is also guilty of this. They reference the latest kerfluffle going on with the Roger Stone trial in Washington, D.C., and the prosecutors resigning after recommending a sentence of 7 to 9 years for the president's advisor. And of course, Barr comes back after the prosecutors resign and says, well, let's get a lighter sentence here. And so after Trump tweets, apparently, according to these folks writing this petition, you see Barr jump too, and that's not how things are supposed to work in the Department of Justice. So I'm going to throw this out here. I mean, do you think that after this whole impeachment thing now ended, the president just feels unconstrained and folks who support him in the cabinet are going to do whatever they think is right, whether or not it comports with justice?
I mean, a couple of aspects to this. One, he is in charge ultimately. I mean, that is an executive branch function. The president can pardon people. I mean, he can kind of do whatever he wants. He can when it comes to that. People, they like to really hit him on it. He says he can do whatever he wants. Well, when it comes to a lot of that, it is his call. The president has the power to pardon people and to grant clemency. These are things that a president is allowed to do. When it comes to Barr, this is political. The background on this in 30 seconds is that you had a team here that was assembled of individuals that were kind of Mueller people and Rosenstein people, and there was a relatively new lead on this, and he had only been on it like 2 weeks when it was to go to the judge, and he went to Barr and he said, this doesn't look right. Something on here does not seem right. They're listing enhancers here to bump that up to 9 years, and one of the reasons they said was because of witness intimidation. Well, the witness himself said, I was never intimidated by, no. That's, and this is a lefty guy. He's like, this is not...
Have you seen Roger Stone? Why would you be intimidated?
Right, and so this, out of concern, the prosecutor went to Barr, and this was well before tweeting of this instance, and said, something's not right here, and Barr said, yeah, I agree, go back and make a recommendation to the judge and list our reasoning why, but obviously it's up to the judge. Well, then he learned on the news, for whatever reason, that didn't happen. And in the midst of all of that, and Barr sending the directive to redo this because this is not the way it was supposed to go, Trump sends out the tweet. Barr's frustration, as he has expressed on an interview, is what that tweeting makes it very difficult for him to do, is to do his job without all of the noise, not so much from Trump, but the reaction to Trump.
Right, because it doesn't look good.
Well, it doesn't. And so what Barr knows, and what we now know, is that all of this was underway, and that first recommendation was not even what that recommendation was supposed to be. So it was going back and correcting that, but because of Trump's tweet, it has allowed political opposition and what some would call the swamp to claim that he was doing this at the behest of Trump, when that just wasn't the case.
But Amy, you could be fair-minded and look at this and say, it just doesn't look right.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, when we start looking at the relationships that are there. So, in corporate world, you have to be very careful about the relationships that you have and making sure that those relationships create fair and equal opportunities for individuals. And so now we're seeing that you have to be extra vigilant when it can potentially be viewed that you are doing something for a friend or someone that you're involved with politically. It seems, from the way media handles it and the way that the president handles it, that he has no even regard for that. And so it goes back to this very simple thing of trust again. Can I trust that the leader of our country is making decisions that are based on equity and equality, or who's getting, the greatest handout? Is it someone that is amongst either him's benefit financially or from kind of these relationships that he had prior to?
Yeah, I mean, what is the point of the tweet, Nick?
Right.
I mean,
I think it's really about
call
control.
Barr, you get the same result. but you don't get all the public blowback, and you don't get Barr having to go out and defend what's going on ABC.
To what she said, it's about control, and it is, because that is the only. It was about being able to control what his message. He cannot rely on the media to. Like if he has a press release or some sort of message, the idea that the media is going to give that a fair presentation, he wrote that off a long time ago. So his only way to communicate with people is through tweets. Now, of course, the tone in which he does it is off-putting for a lot of people, but it hasn't hurt him before. People complained about it when he was running, and he sort of won the day on that particular debate and argument. But I do want to go back and just mention that what is unfortunate is there are two separate things going on here. There is what actually happened, and that is that Barr, the original recommendation was supposed to be for less, and he was independently acting, totally outside of any tweets that would come along. So it's unfair to, whether it's past individuals that have worked in administrations or whatever
who aren't there,
to characterize what he did as a response to something that it was not a response to. Now, to Trump, he is trying to have it a little bit both ways here. One is, I have the right to say what I want, and that's true. He also does have the legal and constitutional authority to use his power in order to weigh in on these things, whether it is as far as clemency or a pardon. But you really should choose one or the other. Right. If you are going to use your legal constitutional authority to have an impact on a case like this, you probably shouldn't be giving your opinion about it while it's going on. Or if you're going to give your opinion about
Twitter.
Right, well, because prosecutors wouldn't do that. You know, we would expect if somebody's prosecuting a case, they're not going to be out there tweeting things.
Well, if they were, they would be removed from the case.
Well, you'd like to think so. Right. But Andrew, or McCabe, has, I mean, that's a whole other story. But Friday, the former deputy director of the FBI, they caught him lying, and there's no prosecution there.
I'm just worried there's nothing that reins the president in, even his own best interest anymore.
I mean, he's been doing that from the beginning, but you're right. Does this now just confirm what he's going to continue doing? And that's a little scary.
Even when it's in his interest not to say something, he says something.
But I think the real message of do whatever you want to is more to the people like the Bidens in this world who he was a guy that openly talked about quid pro quo. I will withhold money from your country if you don't fire this prosecutor that's looking into my son. And whenever there's an attempt to look into it, the person who's attempting to do it, they go after him. So if you want somebody that received a message, do what you want. It's the people like the Bidens of the world who not only get away with it, but anyone that says we're going to look into it, because a free pass has been given. If you are a political opponent of the President of the United States, you cannot be investigated because you are political opposition. And that is the President using his power to investigate political opposition. That is the free pass message that's come out of all that. I know we diverted off Stone.
Nick,
but that's right. Should he be impeached?
Nick, no Malarkey Reed, and Amy Blancett. I don't have a good nickname.
No, I got no nickname.
We need to work on it.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. We'll be back after this.